York, the forgotten slave of a historic expedition. Did you know that during the legendary Lewis and Clark expedition, there was a black man, a slave, who played a crucial role, yet was nearly erased from history? His name was York. He crossed treacherous landscapes alongside the famed explorers, braved the wilderness, and contributed to the expedition's survival. Yet when the journey ended, his sacrifices were ignored, his name pushed into the shadows. York's journey was more than an adventure. It was a tale of injustice, resilience, and the brutal neglect of history. Today we uncover the inspiring yet heartbreaking story of a man who was cast aside, forgotten amid the grand chapters of America's past. York, the forgotten slave of a historic expedition. York was born into slavery. From the moment he took his first breath, he was not his own man. He was the property of William Clark, the man who would later become one of America's most famous explorers. From childhood, York had no choices. He had no freedom. He had no future. He was merely a possession of the Clark family. But York was not like other slaves. He was strong, resilient, and far more intelligent than many realized. These very qualities would make him an unsung warrior in one of the most grueling expeditions in American history. His life was a relentless cycle of labor. He was denied education, forbidden from owning anything, not even himself. But what he did have was strength. And that strength was not just physical. It came from an unbreakable will. York was not a man who simply accepted his fate. He was a survivor, a man of extraordinary endurance. And it was this resilience that led William Clark to choose him as part of one of the greatest explorations in American history. When President Thomas Jefferson commissioned Lewis and Clark in 1804 to lead an expedition across the continent, Clark knew he needed reliable men. Men who could hunt, paddle boats, carry heavy loads, and fight when necessary. York was the perfect choice. But one truth could not be ignored. York had no say in the matter. He was never asked if he wanted to join this dangerous journey. He was simply ordered to go. Had York been a white man, he would have been recognized in history. He might have been granted land and rewards like other members of the expedition. But he was not a white man. He was only a slave. Yet York refused to be weak. He understood that if he was forced to embark on this journey, the only way to survive was to make himself indispensable. And that is exactly what he did. He was the one who hunted to feed the expedition. He carried the heaviest burdens. He fought when necessary, ensuring the group's survival in life-threatening moments. York became part of history, but not as a hero, only as a forgotten shadow. And so his arduous journey began. York in the expedition, the silent warrior. In May 1804, the Lewis and Clark expedition officially set off. The team ventured westward, crossing uncharted lands, braving unforgiving wilderness, and encountering Native American tribes they had never met before. During this journey, York was more than just a slave. He was an essential part of the expedition, a true soldier, though he would never be recognized as one. Unlike the others, York was not a chosen explorer or a trained soldier. He was a man forced to go, yet he proved to be one of the most valuable members of the team. He was stronger than most, able to carry heavy loads and row for hours without complaint. When food was scarce, it was York who hunted, ensuring the group did not starve. When danger arose, he was the one who stood and fought. To the Native American tribes, York was a mystery. They had never seen a black man like him before. With his dark skin and powerful physique, some tribes viewed him as a mighty warrior, perhaps even a deity. Unlike in the white world, where York had known only subjugation, here he was met with awe and respect. On one occasion, as the expedition passed through a tribal village, the locals were astonished by York's appearance. Some touched his skin, expecting the darkness to rub off. When they realized it was his natural color, they saw him as something extraordinary, a man unlike any other. For perhaps the first time in his life, York was not looked down upon, but revered. Yet despite his contributions, York received no recognition. While other members of the expedition were paid, awarded land, and honored upon their return, York received nothing. He remained a slave. Even after fighting, working, and surviving alongside free men, he still had no say in his own fate. But what awaited him after the expedition was even worse. The end of the expedition, York's tragic fate. After more than 2 grueling years of crossing untamed lands, battling harsh nature, and facing countless dangers, the Lewis and Clark expedition finally returned home in 1806. The members of the expedition were welcomed as heroes. They received what they deserved: money, land, and fame. But what about York? There was no crowd waiting to cheer his name. No rewards, no land, no recognition, no freedom. After everything he had endured, York was still just a slave. He believed that after his sacrifices, he had earned a better life. He had fought alongside them, endured hunger and hardship beside them, conquered the merciless wilderness with them. But instead of being granted his freedom, he was forced back into servitude, as if none of it had ever happened. York pleaded with William Clark to set him free. He did not want to return to a life in chains, to be treated as nothing more than property. But Clark refused. To him, York was simply a possession, an instrument that had served its purpose. Clark even saw York's request as an insult, but York did not surrender to fate. He resisted. He refused to work. He defied his master. And for that, he was met with brutal punishment from the very man he had once protected throughout their long journey. Years later, Clark finally granted York his freedom, but by then, it was too late. He had nothing: no land, no money, no opportunities. The once strong and capable man became a wanderer, struggling to survive day by day. No one remembered him. No one wrote his name in the pages of history. The details of York's death remain uncertain. Some say he died of illness. Others believe he was killed in a conflict. But no matter how his story ended, one truth remained: he never received the recognition he deserved. York helped shape history, yet history erased him. While Lewis and Clark became legendary figures, York was reduced to a forgotten shadow, his name left to fade into obscurity. But York's story should never be forgotten. He stands as a testament to injustice, a symbol of those who fought, who sacrificed, yet were never given what they were due. Today, we tell his story so that his name will not be buried beneath the dust of time. To remind the world that no matter how much history tries to forget, the truth endures. York's legacy, a long overdue justice. More than 2 centuries have passed since York embarked on the historic journey alongside the Lewis and Clark expedition. For much of that time, his name was all but forgotten, buried beneath the praises sung for white explorers. But the truth cannot remain erased forever. Today, historians have begun to reevaluate York's role. They scour through surviving documents, trace oral histories from the descendants of indigenous tribes, and examine the sparse mentions of him in expedition journals. And all of it leads to one undeniable fact: York was not merely a servant. He was an indispensable part of that legendary journey. Many scholars argue that without York, the expedition might not have succeeded. He was more than just a laborer. He was a bridge between the explorers and Native American tribes. When indigenous people saw York, they did not see an invader. They saw someone different, someone extraordinary. His very presence often meant the difference between conflict and survival. Today, York is finally being recognized, though belatedly. Monuments and memorial plaques dedicated to him now stand at historical sites linked to the Lewis and Clark expedition. In Louisville, Kentucky, York's birthplace, a statue of him stands proudly in a public square. More than just a tribute, it serves as a powerful reminder that justice may be delayed, but it cannot be denied forever. The image of York, a black man once regarded as property, once denied his own freedom, has now become a symbol of resilience and courage. He stands as a testament to those whom history tried to forget, but whose impact remains etched in the collective memory of those who seek truth. York's story is not just his own. It is the story of countless unsung heroes, those who gave, who sacrificed, yet were never acknowledged. It is a lesson in injustice, in the relentless fight for recognition, for dignity. Today we speak his name, not just to remember him, but to remind the world that history does not belong only to the powerful. It belongs to all who shaped it, even those whose voices were once silenced. Lessons from York's story. York's story is more than just a personal tragedy. It is a reflection of the injustices woven into history. It raises profound questions about recognition, human worth, and the way we choose to remember the past. York gave his strength, intelligence, and bravery to help ensure the success of the Lewis and Clark expedition, yet he received nothing in return, only silence and obscurity. He represents the countless individuals throughout history who contributed to greatness but were never acknowledged. From York's story, we take away several critical lessons. Justice may be delayed, but it must still be pursued. York was never recognized in his lifetime. He passed away in quiet anonymity with no honors or tributes. But the world has changed. Historians have reclaimed his name, and monuments now stand in his honor. This serves as a reminder that while justice may come late, it is never too late to correct the wrongs of history. The forgotten still deserve to be remembered. History often celebrates those in positions of power, generals, explorers, leaders. Yet behind every grand achievement are the unsung figures who toiled, sacrificed, and bled to make those accomplishments possible. York was one of those individuals, and surely there are many more Yorks, whose names we have yet to rediscover. We must rewrite history with fairness. The history we are taught is not always complete or accurate. Many stories have been distorted and many voices have been erased. It is time for the world to take a more honest look at the past, ensuring that no one is forgotten simply because of their race, status, or background. Freedom is a right, not a privilege. York fought like a free man, but he was never granted his freedom. His story is a stark reminder of the deep injustices that have denied people their basic human rights simply because they were born into the wrong time or place. Though we now live in a more progressive world, York's journey reminds us that freedom is never guaranteed. It must always be defended and fought for. For too long, York was lost to history, but now he has returned. His story is not just a tragedy. It is a powerful testament that the truth can never be buried forever. And today, we tell his story so that York is never forgotten again. If you find this story meaningful, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following more inspiring historical stories.